Nobody was expecting something like this. A homeless child asked Sandra Bullock for just $1. But that small request became the start of an event that changed his life. What did Keanu Reeves do as he witnessed this moment? No one could have predicted he'd do something like that. Can $1 really change a life? Sometimes, a small act of kindness sparks an unexpected chain reaction. This wasn't just help, it was a turning point in a person's destiny. And right at that moment, Keanu Reeves stepped in. Don't miss this incredible event. What do you think Keanu Reeves decided? Share your guess in the comments and watch the video to learn the truth. Los Angeles neon lights reflected off rain-soaked sidewalks. Hollywood Boulevard was as busy as ever. But for Tommy, the world was silent. He was 12 years old and had been homeless for 3 months. The thin jacket he wore did little to protect him from the wind. He shoved his hands into his pockets and stood trembling in a corner. His stomach growled, yet he couldn't summon the courage to ask for help. The aroma of food from a nearby restaurant wafted to his nose. Fresh bread, fried potatoes. People didn't even notice, but for Tommy, it was like a dream. Was it right to help himself when his mother was hungry? At that moment, a large black SUV pulled up to the sidewalk. When its doors opened, warm lights spilled out. Sandra Bullock. Tommy recognized her from the screen. He used to watch her movies with his mother in days gone by. But this time, he was seeing her in real life, not on a screen. A voice inside him whispered, "Now or never." His knees trembling, he took a step. His heart pounded rapidly. He was scared, but his hunger was stronger. "Excuse me," he said, his voice shaky and barely audible. Even in that crowded place, Sandra heard the small voice. She turned her head, and her eyes met Tommy's. At that moment, a security guard stepped in. "Ma'am, is he bothering you?" Sandra carefully observed Tommy, a small, worn, yet brave child. She signaled for the guard to back off and bent down to his eye level. "Hello, sweetheart. What's your name?" Tommy looked away. For once, someone was really listening. But should he speak? Could he trust her? At that very moment, someone else was quietly watching them from behind. Keanu Reeves. With his hands in his pockets, he fixed his gaze on Tommy. Tommy's breathing quickened. Was this a trap? Or was Sandra's attention just a brief moment of mercy? If security pushed him away, everything would be over. But Sandra leaned in, coming down to his eye level. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" she asked, her voice warm and gentle. Tommy cleared his throat. "Tommy," he whispered, "I just need a little food." His voice trailed off, and he looked away in shame. Sandra took a deep breath. At that moment, Keanu Reeves, who had been watching quietly in the background, stepped forward. "How long have you been out here, Tommy?" he asked in a kind, non-judgmental tone. Tommy hesitated to answer. Were they really interested? But a voice inside him said that these people were different. 3 months, he murmured softly. "I've been staying in a car with my mom." Sandra and Keanu's expressions changed. This wasn't just a hungry child. It was a child fighting to survive. Sandra smiled gently. "Shall we let your mom know?" Tommy's heart sank. His mom worked the night shift and wouldn't even notice due to exhaustion. Keanu took off his jacket and draped it over Tommy's shoulders. "First, let's get you a hot meal," he said. "Then we'll talk." Tommy hesitated, but then, for the first time, something inside him broke free, and he didn't resist. Maybe this time he wasn't alone. Keanu turned to Sandra. "It's pretty crowded here," he said. "Let's go somewhere quieter." Sandra nodded. "Do you know Vincenzo?" Keanu smiled. "They say he makes the best pasta in town. What do you say, Tommy?" Tommy's eyes widened. Were they really going to buy him food? His stomach growled, but more importantly, that heavy feeling inside him lightened for the first time. Maybe these people really were different. Tommy's heart raced as he walked behind Sandra and Keanu. Was he really going to a restaurant? Vincenzo's golden sign shimmered. When the door opened, the warm air from inside caressed Tommy's face. For the first time, he felt like he was stepping into a safe place. The waiter immediately halted when he saw Sandra and Keanu, but hesitated when his eyes landed on Tommy. Sandra shot him a stern look. "Is there a problem?" The waiter quickly shook his head. "Of course not, sir. Please, come in." They moved to a private corner. As Tommy looked at the white tablecloths and glassware, a strange feeling welled up inside him. He pressed his hands to his knees, careful not to accidentally knock anything over. Keanu opened the menu. "Just let me know what you want." Tommy shook his head. "I don't know." Sandra smiled. "Then let's share." Keanu scanned the menu. "The pasta here is amazing. How about we also order some garlic bread?" Tommy nodded, though he still felt uneasy. Sitting in a place like this, eating a meal, these were things that didn't seem like they belonged to him. When the waiter took their orders and left, Sandra turned to him. "Can you tell me about your mom?" At first, Tommy didn't answer, but there was no judgment in Sandra's gaze. He took a deep breath. "My mom is strong," he said. "She loves me a lot, but she got sick. The medicine was expensive. She lost her job, then we ended up living in a car." Keanu nodded. "Your mom is strong, and you are too." For the first time, Tommy didn't look away. For the first time, he felt like someone truly understood him. When the food arrived, Tommy took a small bite at first, then a bigger one. As the warm pasta filled his stomach, the icy weight inside him began to melt a little. For the first time, he thought, maybe everything can change. Tommy felt truly full for the first time. The plate of pasta was empty, and the last crumbs of garlic bread lay on the table. Just a few hours ago, his stomach had been growling from hunger. Now, he felt a warm sense of comfort. Keanu watched Tommy intently. "Can you tell us a little more about your story?" Tommy hesitated, but he sensed that these people genuinely wanted to help him. Taking a deep breath, he began to speak. "My mom used to work so hard. When I got home from school, she'd cook, and then she'd head off to her night shift. But then she started having headaches. They were really severe. When we went to the doctor, they said it was a brain tumor. The medicine was expensive. We didn't have insurance. She couldn't work. Within a few months, we lost everything. And then, the car." Sandra looked deep into Tommy's eyes. "And school?" Tommy shook his head. "I couldn't go. How can I study when I'm living in a car?" Keanu sighed. "That's just not acceptable." Sandra met Tommy's gaze without looking away. "If we can help you, would you like to go back to school?" Tommy's eyes widened. "Really?" Keanu nodded. "Not just school. Your mom needs help too. She needs to get to a hospital." Tommy swallowed hard. Were all these things real? Sandra smiled gently. "First things first. Let's talk to your mom." She pulled out her phone from her bag. "Can you give us her number?" Tommy's hand went to his pocket. He didn't have a phone, but he carried a small notebook for his mom. He flipped through the pages and, with trembling fingers, found the number. Sandra pressed the buttons. Tommy could feel his heart pounding. In a few seconds, he would hear his mom's voice, and then the phone started ringing. When the restaurant door opened, Tommy's breath caught. His mother was coming in. Sarah looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. But the moment she saw Tommy, all her weariness vanished. Tears streamed down her face as she ran toward her son. "Tommy!" Tommy bolted from his seat and threw himself into his mother's arms. "Mom!" Sarah cupped her son's face in her hands, studying him from head to toe. "Are you okay? Did someone hurt you?" Sandra smiled softly. "Don't worry, Sarah. We just want to help." Still in shock, Sarah looked into Keanu Reeves's eyes. "But why? Who are we?" Keanu shrugged gently. "Sometimes, being in the right place at the right time is enough." Sandra placed her hand on the table. "You've been through hard times, and we want to change that." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "But how?" Keanu pulled out an envelope and handed it to Sarah. "This will pay off all your debts." Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. All of her debts would be wiped away. Sandra added, "Plus, we've arranged an apartment for you. We'll cover the first few months. After that, you'll be able to stand on your own." With trembling hands, Sarah covered her mouth. "Is this for real?" Tommy excitedly clung to his mother. "Mom, we're not going to have to sleep in the car anymore." Sandra winked. "And one more thing for Tommy. He's been enrolled in a new school." Tommy's eyes widened. "Really?" Keanu smiled. "Yes, really." Sarah tried to wipe away her tears but couldn't. "I don't know how to thank you." Keanu grinned gently. "One day, by helping others." That night, Tommy and his mother stepped into a new beginning, and for the first time they believed that everything could be beautiful. But it doesn't end here. If you've watched this far, it means you've been touched. But here's something I noticed. You haven't subscribed yet, and that makes me sad. There are so many more incredible stories waiting to be told. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and be a part of this journey. See you in the next story. Click now and discover more real stories from Keanu Reeves.